Anyways, she'll be leading the dance tomorrow night. Tomorrow, 4 o'clock, we'll start a service. Don't ask me what the order of service is yet because I really don't know. I have a general idea, but I haven't got it solidified. One of the things I've learned about God is he's not early. He doesn't tell us things early. And so when you sit before him and you say, okay, what do you want us to do? Prepare. Okay. Well, I'm preparing, but now how do you want us to put it together? I'll tell you. Okay.
But Lord.
Yeah, people are asking me, when am I doing this and when am I doing that? And I'm like, I don't know yet, but that's okay. 4 o'clock tomorrow, we'll start with a worship time. And I'll give a message on what God has been showing me for this next season, okay? I'll talk very little bit about Rosh Hashanah and what it means in the Day of Trumpets and what that means, but more in line of what God is doing by the declaring of himself as king over the earth, because that's the key to Rosh Hashanah, the Day of the Trumpets, is God declaring, we are king in the garden, but ultimately, he will be king. So that's Rosh Hashanah in a nutshell. Then on Monday, anyone who can join us down at Veterans Park. About 6:45. Think we can make it there that early? Janie? Yeah, 6:45. Because we want to get there and be gone once there's 3 stars in the sky, we should be done. Because Rosh Hashanah begins at sunset this evening, or it begins at sunset Sunday evening, or it begins at sunset Monday evening, and being able to know for sure is one of those things in tradition. We just celebrate both days. So we'll be gathering at the river at Veterans Park, down by where the river meets the Lake Iwana, for the flowing water for Tashluks. And if you don't know what that is, just come, you'll find out. I'll have little packets tomorrow night for people who can't come on Monday. And if you can't come either night and you would like to know, you would like to understand it, I have papers I can give you today. I just don't have the bread yet. So, yeah, I don't have any old bread. There's no old bread in our freezer.
I don't think I even have bread in my freezer.
We don't have old bread in our freezer.
Half a loaf of.
Do you have dried bread? I mean, it's supposed to be old dried bread. Actually, what it boils down to is it's the crumbs out of your pockets from last year that we need to get rid of.
Just take out your bread tonight.
So, I don't have any bread. Anyway, we're going to start with The King Was in the Field. See if my voice will do that song today. Well, I'm not there yet. Let's start with Song 54 instead. will take his place. He will be king over all the earth. I'm going to do one we've not done in a very long time. It was written by a friend of mine, a friend of ours. His name is Patrick Lombroso. It's called The Day of Messiah. What will we do?
Everyone, please stand. Apologize because I'm a sit-down piano player.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'shmoa kol shofar. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who sanctifies us with your commandments and has instructed us to hear the voice of the shofar.
right near the top, you'll find the English to what we just sang. So we just joined in with all the Jews all over the world, singing what they sing every week, the Shema and the HAFTARAH. So now let's speak the English. And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. These words that I command you today shall be in your heart, and you shall teach them diligently to your children, and you shall speak of them when you sit at home, when you walk along the way, when you lie down,
Yeshua HaMashiach Or HaOlam. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who sanctifies us with your commandments, and has commanded us to be a light unto the nations, and has given us Yeshua, the Messiah, the light of the world. Salvation is your name. Right, this is turned off. Should turn it off. It's on now. This one's why I can hear myself. Oh, Lord.
Are any of them coming tomorrow night?
I don't know.
Coming tomorrow night?
I'm not.
Are you two gonna come tomorrow night?
Okay.
Maybe? All right, well, then let's do this twice. Let's do this one now then. You gotta stand up for this one. These are the days of Elijah, declaring the word of. Sorry, Craig, I didn't tell you. And these are the days of your servant Moses, righteousness being restored. And though these are days of great trial, out one more measure than we planned. Whew.
What are you looking for? In your hand.
Oh, my hand. Thank you.
That's the way my life has been lately, you know? Where's this? Where's that? And there are times it's like right in my hand and I don't even realize it. And it's just been that way. I don't know about you guys, but this is a really rough season for a lot of people. Y'all know I do music at care facilities and at different places, and I was at one this week where the activities director helped me carry some stuff out to the car. Because, well, it needed to be carried out, and my arms were kind of full, so she said, "Here, let me help you." So she comes and carries it out to the car and begins to talk to me a little bit about, man, this has just been, you know, it's been a really hard season. Because I don't know what it is about this time of year, but it's really hard. And I began to be able to minister to this person for about half an hour standing out in the parking lot as tears are streaming down her face as she's recognizing healing that is needed, deep healing. And this is a season for that, and that's what I told her. This is a season for that deep healing. This is a season where we come across things from our past or things get brought up. And part of the reason behind that is because we are preparing for a new year in the Hebrew calendar. And there's this place that God brings us to so that we can make better choices. So we can choose forgiveness. We can choose to release our worries, our concerns, our hearts. We can choose to accept what He has to say. And we can choose a better way for ourselves. But a lot of times it involves forgiveness, deep forgiveness. A lot of times it involves looking at the commandments of God and saying, you know what, I've made some bad choices, Father. Not only do I need to forgive other people, but I need to forgive myself. And sometimes, this is going to sound funny, and I've had people get upset with me over this one, but it's the truth. Sometimes we have to stop and say, God, I forgive you. Why? Because I had expectations of things that haven't happened. And Lord, I've held that against you. I've held that against you, Lord, and I'm letting go of that right now. It's not that He needs forgiveness, but we need to let go of all those things that are keeping us from standing before Him in holiness, in righteousness, and in peace. Today's reading out of the Torah is Nitzavim, which means you all standing. It doesn't just mean standing, it means you all standing. Nitzavim. Vim is plural. That refers to the multitude. So this is a commandments to the multitude as Moshe spoke to the people and said, all of you standing here. And Craig is going to read our Torah portion. He signed up for both parts of it. You okay with that? Okay. Deuteronomy, we're going to read chapter 29, starting with verse 9 or verse 10, depending on your translation. It begins with, today you are standing, all of you. So it depends on your translation, because the Jewish Bible has slightly different markings sometimes. But it says, today you are standing, Nitzavim, right now, all of you standing. And we're going to read through to the end of, I think it's the end of chapter 30. Yes. 29, verse 9 or verse 10, through the end of chapter 30.
You stand today, all of you, before the Lord your God, your chiefs, your tribes, your elders, and your officers, even all the men of Israel, your little ones, your wives, and the alien who is within your camps, from the one who chops your wood to the one who draws your water, that you may enter into the covenant with the Lord your God, and into his oath, which the Lord your God is making with you today, in order that he may establish you today as his people, and that he may be your God, just as he spoke to you, and as he swore to your fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now, not with you alone am I making this covenant and this oath, but both with those who stand here with us today in the presence of the Lord our God, and with those who are not with us here today. For you know how we lived in the land of Egypt, and how we came through the midst of the nations through which you passed. Moreover, you have seen their abominations, and their idols of wood, stone, silver, and gold, which they had with them. So that there will not be among you a man, or a woman, or a family, or tribe, whose heart turns away today from the Lord our God, to go and serve the gods of those nations, that there will not be among you a root bearing poisonous fruit and wormwood. It shall be, when he hears the words of this curse, that he will boast, saying, I have peace, though I walk in the stubbornness of my heart, in order to destroy the watered land with the dry. The Lord shall never be willing to forgive him, but rather the anger of the Lord and his jealousy will burn against that man, and every curse which is written in this book will rest on him, and the Lord will blot out his name from under heaven. Then the Lord will single him out for adversity from among all the tribes of Israel, according to all the curses of the covenant which are written in this book of the law. Now the generation to come, your sons who rise up after you, and the foreigner who comes from a distant land, when they see the plagues of the land and the diseases with which the Lord has afflicted it, will say, all its land is brimstone and salt, a burning waste, unsown and unproductive, and no grass grows in it, like the overthrow of Sodom and Gomorrah, Admah and Zeboim, which the Lord overthrew in his anger and in his wrath. All the nations will say, why has the Lord done thus unto this land? Why this great outburst of anger? Then men will say, because they forsook the covenant of the Lord, the God of their fathers, which he made with them when he brought them out of the land of Egypt. They went and served other gods and worshipped them, gods whom they have not known, and whom he had not allotted to them. Therefore the anger of the Lord burned against that land, to bring upon it every curse which is written in this book. And the Lord uprooted them from their land in anger, and in fury, and in great wrath, and cast them into another land, as it is this day. The secret things belong to the Lord our God, but the things revealed belong to us, and to our sons forever, that we may observe all the words of this law. So it shall be, when all of these things have come upon you, the blessing and the curse which I have set before you, and you call them to mind in all the nations where the Lord your God has banished you, and you return to the Lord your God, and obey him with all your heart and soul, according to all that I command you today, you and your sons, then the Lord your God will restore you from captivity, and have compassion on you, and will gather you again from all the peoples where the Lord your God has scattered you. If your outcasts are at the ends of the earth, from there the Lord your God will gather you, and from there he will bring you back. The Lord your God will bring you into the land which your fathers possessed, and you shall possess it, and he will prosper you and multiply you more than your fathers. Moreover, the Lord your God will circumcise your heart and the heart of your descendants, to love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul, so that you may live. The Lord your God will inflict all these curses on your enemies and on those who hate you, who persecuted you. And you shall again obey the Lord, and observe all his commandments which I command you today. Then the Lord your God will prosper you abundantly in all the work of your hand, in the offspring of your body, and in the offspring of your cattle, and in the produce of your ground. For the Lord will again rejoice over you for good, just as he rejoiced over your fathers, if you obey the Lord your God to keep his commandments and his statutes, which are written in this book of the law, if you turn to the Lord your God with all your heart and soul. For this commandment which I command you today is not too difficult for you, nor is it out of reach. It is not in heaven that you should say, who will go up to heaven for us and get it for us and make us hear it, that we may observe it? Nor is it beyond the sea that you should say, who will cross the sea for us to get it for us and make us hear it, that we may observe it. But the word is very near you, in your mouth and in your heart, that you may observe it. See, I have set before you today a life and prosperity, and death and adversity, in that I command you today to love the Lord your God, to walk in his ways, and to keep his commandments and his statutes and his judgments, that you may live and multiply, and that the Lord your God may bless you in the land where you are entering to possess it. But if your heart turns away and you will not obey, but are drawn away and worship other gods and serve them, I declare to you today that you shall surely perish. You will not prolong your days in the land where you are crossing the Jordan to enter and possess it. I call heaven and earth to witness against you today that I have set before you life and death, the blessing and the curse. So choose life in order that you may live, you and your descendants, by loving the Lord your God, by obeying his voice, and by holding fast to him. For this is your life and the length of your days, that you may live in the land which the Lord swore to your fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to give them.
Thank you, Craig. I love hearing him read, don't you? Yeah. Out of Isaiah today, our HAFTARAH portion, I've divided it into two because it's a long reading. Isaiah chapter 61, verse 10 through 62:9. Janie is going to come and read that for us. So let's hear the word.
I will rejoice greatly in the Lord. My soul will exult in my God, for he has clothed me with garments of salvation. He has wrapped me with the robe of righteousness, as a bridegroom decks himself with a garland, and as a bride adorns herself with her jewels. For as the earth brings forth its sprouts, and as a garden causes the things sown in it to spring up, so the Lord God will cause righteousness and praise to spring up before all the nations. For Zion's sake I will not keep silent, and for Jerusalem's sake I will not keep quiet, until her righteousness goes forth like brightness, and her salvation like a torch that is burning. The nations will see your righteousness, and all kings your glory, and you will be called by a new name, which the mouth of the Lord will designate. You will also be a crown of beauty in the hand of the Lord, and a royal diadem in the hand of your God. It will no longer be said to you, forsaken, nor to your land will it any longer be said, desolate. But you will be called, my delight is in her, and your land married. For the Lord delights in you, and to him your land will be married. For as a young man marries a virgin, so your sons will marry you, and as the bridegroom rejoices over the bride, so your God will rejoice over you. On your walls, O Jerusalem, I have appointed watchmen. All day and all night they will never keep silent. You who remind the Lord, take no rest for yourselves, and give him no rest until he establishes and makes Jerusalem a praise in the earth. The Lord has sworn by his right hand and by his strong arm, I will never again give your grain as food for your enemies, nor will foreigners drink your new wine for which you have labored. But those who garner it will eat it and praise the Lord, and those who gather it will drink it in the courts of my sanctuary.
Joy's going to read the last part of it, Isaiah 62:10 through 63:9. Isaiah 62, verse 10 through 63, verse 9.
Go through the gates, go through the gates. Clear up the way for the people. Build up the highway. Remove the stones, lift up a standard over the peoples. Behold, the Lord has proclaimed to the end of the earth. Say to the daughter of Zion, lo, your salvation comes. Behold, his reward is with him, and his recompense before him. And they will call him the holy people, the redeemed of the Lord. And you will be called, sought out, a city not forsaken. Who is this who comes from Edom, with garments of glowing colors from Bosra? This one who is majestic in his apparel, marching in the greatness of his strength. It is I who speak in righteousness, mighty to save. Why is your apparel red and your garments like the one who treads in the winepress? I have trodden the wine trough alone, and from the peoples there was no man with me. I also trod them in my anger and trampled them in my wrath, and their lifeblood is sprinkled on my garments, and I stained all my raiment. For the day of vengeance was in my heart, and my year of redemption has come. I looked, and there was no one to help, and I was astonished, and there was no one to uphold. So my own arm brought salvation to me, and my wrath upheld me. I trod down the peoples in my anger, and made them drunk in my wrath, and I poured out their lifeblood on the earth. I shall make mention of the loving kindness of the Lord, the praises of the Lord, according to all that the Lord has granted us, and the great goodness toward the house of Israel, which he has granted them according to his compassion, and according to the abundance of his loving kindness. For he said, surely they are my people, sons who will not deal falsely. So he became their Savior. In all their affliction he was afflicted, and the angel of his presence saved them. In his love and in his mercy he redeemed them, and lifted them and carried them all the days of old.
Our gospel portion is in the Gospel of John. For some reason I marked the wrong one. That's interesting. So I'm going to go to the one that I've studied, which is in Luke. In Luke chapter 12, verse 41. I want us to hear this because this is where the Lord took me this morning. So I think I will read that. Luke chapter 12, verse 41 begins with this. Kepha, Peter said, Sir, are you telling this parable for our benefit only or for everyone's? And the Lord replied, Who is the faithful and wise manager, whose master puts him in charge of the household staff to give them their share of food at the proper time? It will go well with that servant if he is found doing his job when the master comes. Yes, I tell you, he will put him in charge of all that he owns. But if that servant says to himself, My master is taking his time coming, and starts bullying the men and the women servants and eating and drinking and getting drunk, then his master will come on a day when the servant isn't expecting him, at a time he does not know in advance. His master will cut him in two and put him with the disloyal. Now the servant who knew what his master wanted, but did not prepare or act accordingly to his will be whipped with many lashes. However, the one who did what deserves a beating, but did not know, he will receive only a few lashes. From him who is given much, much will be demanded. From someone to whom people entrust much, they still ask more. I have come to set fire to the earth, and how I wish it were already kindled. I have an immersion to undergo. How pressured I feel until it's over. Do you think I've come to bring peace in the land? Not peace, I tell you, but division. For from now on, a household of 5 will be divided, 3 against 2, 2 against 3. Father will be divided against son, and son against father. Mother against daughter, daughter against mother. Mother-in-law against her daughter-in-law, and daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And to the crowds, Yeshua said, When you see a cloud bank rising in the west, at once you say a rainstorm is coming. And when the wind is from the south, you say there will be a heat wave, and there is. Hypocrites, you know how to interpret the appearance of the earth and sky. How is it that you do not know how to interpret this present time? May the Lord add blessing to the reading of his word. I'm going to give us clean hands and clean hearts, or clean hands, pure hearts, whatever it's. We bow our hearts, we bend our knees. Spirit, come make us humble. We perfect song for today. I have it marked and I still go past it. You have set before us two ways for us to go. In the valley of decision, I'll cleave to you, my Lord. Upholding your precepts, obeying your commands, you will lead us, Father, into the promised land. I choose life, I choose blessing, I choose to honor you, my Lord. I choose life, I choose blessing, I choose to live by your word. I choose life. You've called us to be a people, a nation set apart. You're our prized possession, who will know the Father's heart. So we're turning back to you, Lord, to walk in your holy ways. We stand between the mountains, I'll choose to obey. And I choose life, I choose blessing, I choose to honor you, my Lord. I choose life, I choose blessing, I choose to live by your word. I choose life, I choose life, I choose blessing, I choose to honor you, my Lord. I choose life, I choose blessing, I choose to live by your word. I choose life, I choose
Couldn't get the sound.
Huh?
Couldn't get the sound. There's a sound that kept coming, but I couldn't get it.
I find it interesting, sometimes God leads us to things that is different than what was original, okay? And I do not know why in my Bible I had turned to Luke instead of John. I don't know. But I do know that as I read it, God was speaking very clearly to go right along with what is in the Torah portion. A lot of times as Messianic followers, we look around at people and we go, how did they not get it? Why don't they see the importance of the festivals? Why don't they see the importance of the Torah? Why do Christians today, in large part, believe and understand that, love the Lord your God, love your neighbor as yourself, everything else is immaterial? That's the way they read it. And yet the scripture says, Jesus said, Yeshua said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. Love your neighbor as yourself. On these two things, the rest of the commandments hang. We read these two things and we forget the last part of that. When we look at it and we go, okay, well, obviously I love God and I'm trying to love my neighbors, horrible as they are, but, I'm going to try. Isn't that the way we are sometimes? Isn't that the way we are sometimes? And honestly, I got to tell you, there are times I ask God, did you really have to love stupid people so much that you made so many of us? You ever be there? You ever get there? I don't know how people read this book and do not see, do not understand. And what the Lord was showing me today in this portion is of those ones who recognize. Yeshua said to Peter, he was talking to the disciples, those closest to him. He said, this parable is for you. This parable is for you. Who is the faithful and wise manager? That's the one the master puts in charge of everyone to share the food at the proper time, right? It will go well with him if he is found doing his job when his master comes. I want to hear, well done, thou good and faithful servant, don't you? Yeah. I want to be teaching his word in his time because his word is the food. The Torah is represented by the manna that God fed the Israelites with for how many years? 40 years. From a few days after they left Egypt up until the time they were getting ready to cross into the promised land, God fed them every day with his manna. His word is a manna to us. His word. The faithful manager, the wise manager, is one who feeds the people in proper time. I never saw that part before. Proper time. What's proper time? Proper time is now. And he says, but if that servant says to himself, my master's taken his time, and starts bullying the men and women servants, eating and drinking and getting drunk. And honestly, I had a very weird dream last night that I didn't understand. I woke up from this. God's been speaking to me in dreams again. He hasn't done that for a long time. So it's kind of just been, woke up at 3 o'clock this morning going, huh? And in this dream, I was going to a bowling alley. Now, I don't know why. I don't understand some of it. But in the bowling alley was supposed to, in the back alley was a little lounge bar place that I frequented when I was very young. So that might be what it relates to. I don't know. But there was this place that I was going into this place. My purpose was to drink. The reason I was going there was because I just wanted to drink. And I wanted to wipe everything out with drink and alcohol. And that's not a good place to be, right? This was in my dream, okay? This is not where I'm at. This is the dream God gave me. And in this dream, as I go into this place, the back room that had been the big bar, with room for band and room for dancing and all that stuff, had been kind of cleaned out. And there was another little room that they were serving alcohol in that I could have gone straight through and gone to that. But in this room was a choir practicing. And I walk in and they're all holding a book of an old cantata. Some of us have been around a long time and we know what a cantata is, right? It's a selection of songs put together to tell a story. There's readings involved, all of that stuff. And I looked at them and I went, I know that one. I've done that one a lot of times. John W. Peterson cantata, Jesus is Coming.
Yeah.
And they went, oh good, we need an alto, get in here. And all of a sudden, instead of going in through and past this group, in to go get totally drunk, because that's what I had wanted to, that's what I came in for, I was singing. And I was singing, Jesus is coming. He's coming, he's coming. And they gave me the solo that I sang in that when I was a kid. Well, kid, yeah, I was a kid. Nowadays I see myself as a kid. When I was in high school and I was a part of a particular group, and I sang this solo. And it was one of those almost one-note songs all the way through. And it was out of that particular musical. And basically it says, are you ready? Is your house in order for the coming of the King? Are you under his command in each and everything? Are you now a servant? And they said, you can do that song. And I went, That's the song I got a scholarship to Bible college singing that song in a contest. Well, they had disqualified me from the preacher boy contest, so I couldn't do that one. I wasn't a boy. I was a finalist till I showed up and they found out I was a girl. But they said, how about you sing instead? So I did that song. And as and I woke up from that and I went, what? That's just, and then as I'm reading this, I'm hearing that dream. I'm seeing that dream. And you can honestly say that the church has gone through these seasons where for a season right after Yeshua was here, the disciples were teaching the pure word of God. It was wonderful. There was this Messianic grouping. Then they got kicked out of synagogues because of the Bar Kokhba rebellion. The synagogue, they didn't trust him anymore. The rabbis had declared Bar Kokhba to be the Messiah, and the Christians, those who followed Yeshua, HaMashiach, said, no, he's not Messiah. Yeshua was Messiah, and there was a big fight. They got kicked out of the synagogues. They had to meet in their own, and a bunch of Gentiles came in, and it got shifted and changed, and all this stuff happened, and there was a leadership, and you cannot tell me that the leadership of the church out of Rome did not do this. Well, Jesus is taking a long time, so we're just going to eat and drink and get rich off the people. That's what it seems like the Pope started doing, right? That seems to be what the church started doing. And they stopped teaching in time with the Word of God. They shifted Sabbath to Sunday. My Baptist friends really don't like it when I look at them and say, I know you guys really think that the Pope was the Antichrist, because a lot of them, they still hold to that old tradition. So if the Pope is the Antichrist, why are you following the papal commands? And they look at me, oh, we are not. I said, yeah, you are. If you worship on Sunday, you are following the command of the Pope, who you claim is the Antichrist. So why are you following the Pope's command? The Pope, the Catholic Church, and it's in their doctrine. And you can look it up where they say God gave him the right to change the Sabbath from Saturday to Sunday. It isn't in here. Anywhere. I can't find it. But what I do see is this. In this passage I read by mistake. I've been reading it all week by mistake. And I just now realized that it was a wrong passage. Whoa, it's not John. It says, the servant who knew what his master wanted, but chose not to do it, is judged, and is judged harshly. He'll receive many lashes. It does not say, and I'm going to say this very strong, it nowhere says here he will not receive a reward of any kind, but it says there will be judgment. The Torah says there can be 50 lashes and no more, lest you degrade your brother in your presence. So the 49 lashes is the most they will do. Why? Because they might miscount and end up giving you 50 by mistake, and God says don't go over that, and they don't want to do that. So 49 lashings comes right out of the Torah. The one who knows what the master wants, and the master is still his master, get that. You can't look at somebody who is disobedient and say, obviously you don't know God. Because they might. But they might be being disobedient right now. He still belongs to the master. The master will judge them, not me. Thank you, Lord. Not you. Thank you, Lord, because that means they can't judge me either, right? I mean, but there's this place of, and then it says, but the one who did those things that deserve a beating, but did not know, will receive few lashes. I know of a couple different pastors in town where, honestly, people have gone to them and asked them to teach on the Sabbath, hoping that they'll see Sabbath and they'll start recognizing it and they'll go back to Saturday. And when the pastors don't, people get upset and leave. It's not my job to convince another house to come to Saturday. It's not my role. That's God's role. Let him do it. Let him tell his people. Some have actually dug in and they study but they've been taught, and they have these blinders on to what they've been taught, so that when they read the word, when they study it out, they're seeing it from a specific perspective. Their world is focused in this perspective, and they don't see the other perspective. They don't get it. When I first started looking into the Messianic movement, I found a whole lot of people that were really, really angry with the church at large. I read an awful lot of people like, the preachers are lying to us. Well, my daddy was a preacher, and I got to tell you something. My daddy did not lie to people. He would have just had a conniption fit if someone came in and started lying to his people about a doctrine. But my dad believed certain doctrines, and he read this book from that perspective. In his heart, he was teaching all the truth that he knew and that he understood. He was never intentionally lying to his people. I know that because he loved his people. Sometimes I think he loved his people more than he loved his family, but that's a whole different story. But there's this place where the focus is on loving your people. No pastor who loves his people is going to intentionally lie. They're not. Most pastors in this town that will be getting up and preaching tomorrow have no clue that tomorrow evening at sunset, Rosh Hashanah begins. And those who do know it have no clue the effect it has on the world. They don't get it. Because they don't know God's judgment on them will be different. From him who has been given much, much will be demanded. I've been told that over and over and over again in my life. By different people, for different reasons. Over giftings people have seen in me, over skills, people, whatever. And it's been given to me sometimes as a word of correction and a word of direction, but more as a word of correction. It says, God's given you a lot. Because he's given you a lot, he expects a lot from you. Because to the one whom much is given, much is demanded. Oh, I don't like that verse. I don't like that verse any more than I appreciated any use of the word potential. If she'd only live up to her potential. My teacher used to tell my mother that all the time. She'd only do her work to her potential. Who wants that, right? But God does expect us, when we know something, when we get it, when we understand something, he expects and he demands, and he has the right to do that. Why? Because he's king. He created us. He gets to choose. He created us. We can choose to be a part of his family or not. Those are our choices. Be a part of his family. Don't be a part of his family. But those who choose to not be a part of his family will suffer. Those who understand. When you see a cloud bank rising in the west, at once you say a rainstorm is coming. And when the wind is from the south, you say there will be a heat wave. And it happens. How many of us have looked on the weather apps, or how many of us have just looked at the change in the temperature in the air yesterday and went, ooh, this is kind of cold. There's a cold wind coming in. I don't know what's going to happen. Did you know we're supposed to have snow? Shh. I'm sorry. I know it's a 4-letter word. I get that. To the higher elevations is coming snow. How's that? Is that okay?
That's good.
That's good. Okay. But it's coming. We can look at the sky. We can see the clouds the way they are. We can feel the temperature changes in the air overnight. Better protect your tomatoes because there's a freeze. Bring them inside. Now's the time to get all those green tomatoes because tomatoes are not ripening this year, I hear. I don't know. I'm not a gardener. But it's time to get ready for something. We know how to interpret that. Do we know how to interpret the signs of the times? Do we recognize what's going on in the world around us? Do we see the storms? Do we see the uprisings? Do we know what's going on? Do you know that in this last week, representatives from 70 nations gathered together with a rabbi who represents a group that wants to be the next Sanhedrin? And I say it that way because they're not recognized in Israel as the Sanhedrin, but they call themselves that. Representatives from 70 nations on the Mount of Olives offered an olah offering, a sacrifice. On the Mount of Olives, representatives from 70 nations slaughtered a lamb and burned it and prayed to the God of heaven and declared that they would follow after him under the Noahic covenant. Yeah. It's interesting. Did you know that was going to happen? I saw it coming, and I thought, Rico Cortez, who is a man that I admire much, don't always agree with everything he's taught. In fact, he flat out said, the last time we listened to him, he said, if you have my tapes on da-da-da-da from this year, get rid of them. I was wrong. I admire a man who's willing to say that. Do you remember that at the conference?
Yeah.
Yeah, he said, I was wrong. And I'm willing to admit I was wrong. And the more I've studied, the more I've studied, the more I've studied. And he has been studying the temple. And he has been studying the protocol of the kingdom. And he made a post this last week. He's made a declaration. He's put it out there on Facebook. He's put it out there on YouTube. He's got leading off on his page that says, I stand as a witness against any who would offer a sacrifice in any place that is not the temple of my God and my King. My God, my King, has a house that the sacrifices are to take place at. This offering on the Mount of Olives does not follow the protocol of my King. And I'm just like, wow. What a powerful statement. Are we paying attention to the rabbis in Israel that are all saying this coming year is the year of Messiah? It is the year where Mashiach will be declared. Either at the beginning of this year or at the end of this year, they're not sure. Why? Because Rabbi Kedorah said, when there are elections and no government, there will be two from the house of Benjamin who will fight with each other. Well, Benjamin Netanyahu and Benny Gantz. There have been elections. There is no government. Benjamin Netanyahu leads the one party. Benny Gantz leads the other party. They are opposed to each other. They had almost equal votes. They are fighting. President Rivkin offered a peace and a truce between them. Gantz refused it. Netanyahu said, sure, I'll share the prime minister position. I'll share it with you. Both Benjamins. The prophecies from their prophets that declared the coming of the king. According to the prophet, the one who wrote it, when this happens, by the end of the year, Mashiach will be revealed. It's like, whoa. When they asked this man, who is Mashiach? He left a letter. He said, do not open it until I've been dead a year. By that time in his life, he was using scribes. He was not writing himself anymore. He was very old. He was quite the mystic. And he declared, I have seen the Mashiach. I have seen him. He said, who is he? He had a scribe write it down. Because it's not in his writing, his son is denying it. We don't know who the scribe was. He's not come forward. Because he was sworn to secrecy. But the letter basically said, I have seen Mashiach. And he is not coming. He is coming again. And his name is Yeshua. Now, like I said, this prophet's son, the one who took over the dynasty per se, the school, the students, has said, oh, that was not my father. That was not Rabbi Kadura. That was, I gotta tell you something, I think it might have been. Why? Because there are many rabbis. There are many who have seen Yeshua. There are many who see he is coming. There are many. When Moses stood before the people on the mountain, he said, today you're standing, all of you, before Adonai your God, your heads, your tribes, your leaders, your officers, all the men of Israel, along with your little ones, your wives, and the foreigners here with you in your camp. Who are we? Well, I know there's a couple people here that are Jewish descent, but I'm not. I'm a foreigner standing in the camp saying, I have fallen in love with the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I am a Ruth. I will follow you to the ends of the earth. Like Ruth the Moabite. I will follow. From the one who chops the wood to the one who draws the water, it doesn't matter what your job is. It doesn't matter how menial the task. It doesn't matter. Any of that is not important. What's important is that you stand today to enter the covenant of Adonai your God into his oath, which Adonai your God is making with you today, so that he can establish you as a people, so that for you he will be God, as he said to you and as he swore to your ancestors, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. As a kid, I learned a song. Father Abraham had many sons. You remember it? Many sons had Father Abraham. I am one of them, and so are you. So let's just praise the Lord. Right arm. Right? When we led the kids, I always did this arm, and I said right arm because they would follow looking at me. So I've got my left and right backwards ever since. Sometimes I wonder if the church realizes what it is to be a son of Abraham. We sing the songs, we acknowledge it, we say we are sons of Abraham, we follow after Yeshua of Nazareth. But we don't realize he was a Jew. He was also a son of Isaac and a son of Jacob. And he did these things. And if we're going to follow him, we need to do what he did. Not just wear bracelets and say, what would Jesus do? But what did he do? Why don't we start doing what he did? And he didn't just go around healing and teaching. He taught what? The kingdom. The kingdom is at hand. He healed to prepare people for the kingdom. Not in order to make a name for himself. Not to draw attention. Not to show off. He never healed for that purpose. He healed and he taught kingdom. The next part in Deuteronomy says, but I am not making this covenant and this oath only with you. Not just the one standing here. Rather, I am making it both with you who are standing here today, before Adonai our God, and also with him who is not here today with us. John 17. Verse 20. Some of Yeshua's last words before he died. A prayer he offered. I pray not only for these. He was praying over his disciples. But also for those who will trust in me because of their word. That they may all be one. Just as you, Father, are united with me and I with you, I pray that they may be united with us so that the world may believe that you sent me. What's the purpose of unity? So we can all be happy and get along? No. Has nothing to do with being happy and getting along. Has everything to do with that the world will believe that Yeshua is the Son of God. That they will believe. What's the purpose of Israel? He tells us in Deuteronomy, verse 23 or 24, depending on your translations, when the judgment comes, then all the nations will ask, why did the Lord do this to this land? What's the meaning of such frenzied, furious anger? And people will answer. Who will answer? The nations. It's because they abandoned the covenant of Adonai, the God of their fathers, which he made with them when he brought them out of the land of Egypt. What's the purpose of Israel? So people will know the Lord. So people will know who God is. So people will recognize the God who created it all. At the end of this speech, towards the end of it, the end of our reading today, Moshe said, I'm presenting to you today, on the one hand, life and good, and the other, death and evil. Love the Lord your God. Follow his ways. Observe his commandments, his regulations, and his rulings. If you do, you will live and increase in number. Then he says, I call on heaven and earth to witness. I have presented to you life and death, blessing and curse. We have choices. Isaiah, when he spoke to the people, declared some choices. Said the people have chosen to walk away from their covenant. And because they made a choice, they walked away from the covenant, judgment comes. But God. You know, there's a good but. But God. When we ask forgiveness of someone, we need to say, I am so sorry I hurt you. If we follow up with a but, that totally ruins. It makes it not an apology. But you didn't understand what I meant. No buts are allowed in forgiveness. Except for when it comes to God. And why is that? Because when God says, but God, he says, you turned away from me, but I will restore you. I will restore you. All we have to do is turn back to him. Go through the gates. Clear the way. I've posted watchmen on the walls of Jerusalem. Adonai proclaims to the end of the earth, say to the daughter of Zion, salvation is coming. Who is salvation? Yeshua. If you were reading this in Hebrew, you would actually read the word Yeshua. Yeshua is coming. He is coming. And they, who's the they? The nations. We'll call them the holy people, the redeemed of Adonai. You will be called the sought after ones, a city no longer abandoned. Sometimes we feel abandoned. Sometimes it feels like when we've turned away from God, we've lost everything and we feel abandoned by God. And I'm going to tell you something. God never leaves us abandoned. All we have to do is come back. All we have to do is come back. All we have to do is say, okay, today I'm choosing to follow you. Just like in my dream last night, I could have chosen to say, I don't want to sing, I want to go get drunk. You know, there was a time in my life, that's what I wanted. I'm so glad God has healed me of that. I'm grateful that now I just want to sing his praises. I just want to sing for him. I just want to declare him. I just want us all to know that he is the God who loves us. And it doesn't matter where we've been, what we've done. It doesn't matter. If we didn't understand, he will not judge us in the same way as when he chooses us, when he teaches us, when he gives us his truth. When we understand, he expects us to obey. Is it that hard? How many of us have children? Yeah? I know you're not there yet, but someday. How many of us looked at our kids and we asked them to do something and we'd leave and we come back and we, didn't you understand me? Did you not understand? Sometimes we give them partial instruction, or we give them instruction, but they only hear part of it. And we go, didn't you understand? Had a circumstance not long ago where I asked someone to make some sign, one of my granddaughters to make some signs for me, and I said it needs to be on both sides. Well, she didn't understand my directions. Part of that was because I didn't give them very well, and so she, on the one side she made part of the sign, and on the other side she made the other part of the sign. I needed it to say the same thing on both sides so it could be read both directions, right? She did what I asked. She didn't understand. Was I mad at her? No. I looked at that and I went, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't explain this very well. You really didn't understand my intention, and I can tell that. And it's a beautiful sign, but I need it to be the same on both sides. She felt bad. But I wasn't mad at her. I wasn't going to punish her for that. When we don't get it, God isn't mad at us, and he's not going to punish us for that. When he starts to help us understand what it's really about, then we are responsible to obey. We take care of grandchildren in the afternoons 3 days a week when they get off the bus half hour before their dad gets home. They have chores. They have chores they're supposed to do. Kindergartner and a fifth grader. Dad walks in and looks at him and says, hey, are your chores done? And they went, deer in the headlight look, you know. But Grandma's here. I said I gave him snacks. I didn't have them do their chores yet. And he goes, okay, girls, get up. Chores, go, do them. You know what they are. And they did. Even the kindergartner. They did. He's a good father. Yeah. Why? He's teaching his children obedience. And even when they complain, he says, I don't want to hear it. I don't always want to go to work. But I do it because I have to, because I'm supposed to, because it's expected. I expect you to do your chores. You're part of this family. You will carry your weight. Cool. We need to recognize that in the body of Messiah too. We belong to a Father who expects us to obey him. Just because we haven't in the past doesn't mean we can't choose that now. We can choose that now. I'm going to close with the song that I was going to start with and change my mind, because I think it's a really good song to close with. And it's this place of the season we are in, where the king is out in the field ready to receive us. And when we have lost everything, the scriptures talk about this place of gleaning. When someone is a widow, when someone has lost everything, they have the way that they are provided for is to glean, to go into the fields and glean. And those who own the fields watch. And it's the story of Ruth and Boaz. But it's also our stories. Our story with the king. Our story with the king. Before me lay the wheat fields, but my charge was to the corners and the edges. My inheritance was lost in me. The king was in the field where I went to lead. The king was in the field, and his eyes fell on me, and I beheld his majesty, his favor came down on me. He brought me from my labors to the chambers of the king. At the threshing floor, I laid myself down at his feet. He offered the corners of his robe, a covering, restored me my provision, and a song to sing. The covenant had been there all along, I just didn't see. The king was in the field where I went to lead. The king was in the field, and his eyes fell on me, and I beheld his majesty, his favor came down on me. He brought me from my labors to the chambers of the king. He brought me back, now I've been redeemed. He secured my future, took away my grief. The king was in the field where I went to lead. The king was in the field, his eyes fell on me, and I beheld his majesty, his favor came down on me. He brought me from my labors to the chambers of the king. He brought me from my labors to the chambers of the king. Abba Father, may we choose to respond to you today. To respond to your offer of forgiveness, to respond to your offer of a place with you, that we walk with you, Lord God. That we choose to join with you, because you will bring us into your chamber. You will make us your bride. And I thank you. I ask that any who is not here, who has not put themselves in that position, Father, that today they will do that. They will say, Lord, I want to be yours. I want to follow you. Any who watches this video later, Lord, that if there's a place where they have not submitted to you, Lord, that they would submit it to you. That we will enter this new year, 5780, the year of the declaration, that we will be declaring, you are our God. We are your people. You, Lord God, love us. And I thank you for that. And I ask this all in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach, our Lord, our Messiah. Amen. Joy, do you want to release us?
Everyone, please stay. Yivarechka Adonai v'yishmerecha, Yair Adonai panav elecha v'yihudnecha, Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace.